The stars hung silent in the dark sea of space. His ship drifted slowly, a tired old freighter with engines that coughed more than they roared. Inside sat a man who had little left. His name was Captain Joran, though most people only called him the Drifter. He had no crew, no family, and almost no credits in his account. Every meal was counted, every fuel cell was precious. Still, Joran moved from one station to another, trading scraps, doing small jobs, always one step away from hunger. On this day, he landed at a shadowy market station on the edge of the Orion Belt. The air smelled of grease and smoke, and the halls were filled with merchants selling everything from rusty ship parts to dangerous black market tech. He had only a handful of credits left, not enough for fuel, not enough for repairs. He was broke, and he knew it. As he wandered through the narrow alleys of the station, something caught his eye. In a corner stall, dim lights glowed around a large glass pod. Inside, frozen in pale blue ice, was a woman. Not human. Her skin had a faint silver glow, her hair floated like strands of white fire, and her features were sharper, more delicate than any person Joran had ever seen. She looked asleep, locked in time, with frost crystals shining across her face. The merchant noticed Joran staring. A fat man with oily skin and yellow teeth, he grinned. Beautiful, isn't she? Rare stock. Alien female preserved in cryo for who knows how long. Worthless, though. No one buys frozen bodies anymore. Can't even prove if she's alive. Joran frowned. Why sell her, then? The merchant shrugged. Because someone always looks. Someone always dreams. But dreams cost credits, and you, my friend, don't look like a man with many credits. He laughed. Joran turned to leave, but his eyes stayed fixed on the pod. There was something in the woman's expression, even through the frost. She looked fragile, almost lost. He had seen dying soldiers, starving children, broken people, but never someone like this. His gut told him she was alive. His gut told him she was waiting. Against all reason, he asked, "What happens if no one buys her?" The merchant smirked. "Then I stripped the pod for parts. As for her, into the waste. Nobody cares for old ice dolls." The words cut into Joran's chest. He had nothing. Not even a plan for tomorrow, yet the thought of this strange woman being tossed into garbage made his hands tighten into fists. "How much?" he asked quietly. The merchant laughed again. "Too much for you. 20 credits, Joran checked his belt pouch. He had 23 credits left. Enough for one tank of fuel, maybe a few meals, maybe one more week alive. That was all. If he bought her, he would have nothing left. He stood in silence, heart beating fast. Logic screamed to walk away. Survival demanded it. But his eyes fell on her again. Frozen, helpless, waiting. Something inside him whispered, "Don't leave her here." "I'll take her," he said. The merchant blinked, then broke into a grin. "You're a fool, but fools make good customers." Done. Joran handed over the credits. His last credits. The merchant gave him the pod, heavy and cold, and a bundle of simple fabric clothes. "You'll want these," the merchant said mockingly. "Can't have her walking around naked if she wakes up, eh?" Joran ignored the laughter. He dragged the pod back through the narrow halls step by step until he reached his ship. The freighter's bay doors hissed open and the pod settled inside with a dull thud. For a moment he stood there, staring at the frozen woman. What had he done? He was broke, trapped, and now carrying a burden that could draw attention he didn't need. Pirates, traders, even bounty hunters might fight for something like this. He reached out and touched the glass. It was icy cold, biting at his fingertips. Her face was so still, yet something about her felt alive, as if her eyes might open any second. Joran whispered, "I don't know who you are. I don't know why I'm doing this. But you're not going to the trash. Not while I'm alive." The engines rumbled weakly as he lifted off from the station. Behind him, the black market traders laughed. Sure, they had tricked a poor man into wasting his last coins. Ahead of him stretched only darkness, danger, and hunger. But in the center of his ship, lying inside the glass pod, was the frozen alien woman, and though she did not move, though she did not speak, Joran could not shake the feeling that everything in his life had just changed. For the first time in years, he was no longer drifting without purpose. For the first time, he had something worth protecting. And somewhere in the silence of the stars, the story of a human and a frozen alien woman had just begun, the awakening. The ship drifted through silent space, its old engines humming like tired lungs. Captain Joran sat in the pilot's chair, eyes fixed on the stars. But his mind kept circling back to the cargo bay behind him, the pod, The alien woman. She was still there, locked in her glass prison of frost and wires. He had spent his last credits to bring her aboard, and now doubt gnawed at him. Had he doomed himself for a stranger? Fuel was running low. Food was almost gone. Yet every time he thought of ejecting the pod back into space, his chest grew heavy. He could not abandon her. On the second night, something changed. A soft alarm buzzed on the ship's console. Joran hurried to the bay. The cryopod's lights were flickering, frost melting down its sides like tears. The pod was failing. "Damn it," he muttered, pulling at the controls. He wasn't a scientist, wasn't a medic, just a pilot with grease on his hands. But he knew one thing. If the pod shut down fully, she would die. He slammed the override. Steam hissed. The glass lid slid open and cold mist poured into the bay. For a moment, Joran froze, heart hammering. Her chest rose, slowly, then again. She was breathing. The alien woman's skin glowed faintly silver under the bay lights. Her eyelids fluttered, lashes white as snow. Her lips parted and a thin whisper of breath escaped. She looked fragile, as if even the air might break her. Joran grabbed the bundle of clothes he had been given. Rough fabric, simple but warm. He gently draped it over her, unsure if it was right. Her body trembled with shivers, thin arms curling inward against the cold. "Easy," he whispered. His voice cracked. "You're safe. You're not out there anymore." Her eyes opened, not fully, just a slit at first, but enough for him to see them, bright, strange, like liquid silver swirling with faint light. Her gaze darted across the bay, then locked onto him. Joran's throat went dry. He expected fear, maybe anger. Instead, her eyes filled with something else, confusion and trust. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Only a breath, broken and weak. Then he felt it, like a whisper, but inside his head. "Protector." Joran stumbled back. "What? Did you?" Her lips never moved, but the word echoed again, soft, fragile, buried in his mind. "Protector." He stared at her. Telepathy, mind speech. Whatever it was, it chilled him deeper than space ever had. The woman tried to sit, but her limbs shook too much. Joran rushed forward, helping her up. She weighed almost nothing, as if hollow. He wrapped the cloth tighter around her, feeling her shivers calm a little. "You're going to be fine," he said, though he wasn't sure. "I'll take care of you." She blinked slowly, as if the words reached her. Her hand, thin and trembling, lifted toward his chest. Her fingertips brushed his jacket, clumsy and weak. Then another word bloomed in his mind. "Safe." Joran exhaled, not realizing he had been holding his breath. Yeah, safe. But deep inside, he knew it was a lie. They weren't safe. He had stolen her from a black market station. Whoever had been guarding her, whoever had owned that pod, they would not just forget. He carried her to the crew quarters. It had been years since anyone else had slept there. Dust covered the blankets and one bunk sagged with rust. But he found a clean sheet, spread it out, and laid her gently down. Her eyes closed, but her breathing steadied. She whispered one last thought before sleep pulled her under. Not alone. Joran sat beside her bunk long after she slept. His hands rubbed his tired face, but his eyes stayed fixed on her. Not alone. It had been years since he had heard words like that. He had drifted from planet to planet, job to job, always nameless, always alone. Now with a single alien woman who could barely speak. Everything felt different. But questions gnawed at him. Who was she? Why was she frozen? Who had hunted her? And most of all, what had he just invited onto his ship? The hum of the engines filled the silence. Outside, the stars moved slowly past, endless and cold. But inside that old freighter, something impossible had awakened. Joran leaned back against the wall, staring at the silver glow of her skin. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Hunger, death, or worse. Men chasing the prize he had stolen. But for now, in that quiet cabin, he let himself believe the fragile words she had given him. Not alone, and as he drifted into uneasy sleep, one truth settled deep into his bones. This was no accident. Their meeting was the start of something bigger. Something dangerous, something neither of them could escape. First contact. The ship glided through the dark between stars, silent except for the hum of its aging engines. In the crew quarters, the alien woman stirred. Her body still trembled with weakness, but the color of her skin had shifted from pale silver to a warmer glow. Her breathing had steadied, though each breath seemed to weigh heavily like she carried 1,000 years of exhaustion. Captain Joren sat across from her, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. He hadn't slept much. His eyes were red, his jaw rough with stubble. He kept watching her, waiting for the moment she would open her eyes again. When she finally did, it startled him. Bright silver eyes stared at him, calm but curious, like she had been studying him in her dreams and was only now comparing the truth. "You're awake," Joren said softly. He kept his voice steady, careful. He didn't want to scare her. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Instead, his head filled with a faint whisper. "Protector." Joren blinked. It hadn't been a dream. She really spoke without words. He leaned forward. "Is that what you call me?" Her eyes softened. Slowly she nodded. Then her voice, no, her mind whispered again. "You chose me. You carried me. You are protector." Joren shifted uncomfortably. He had never been anyone's protector. He had barely kept himself alive most days. But she looked at him like it was true. "What's your name?" he asked. At first there was only silence. Then a faint stream of sounds brushed against his thoughts. Not quite words, more like music. Soft, flowing, hard to hold on to. He tried to repeat it aloud, but the syllables bent on his tongue. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You cannot say it. Too heavy for your voice?" Joren exhaled slowly. "Then what should I call you?" The woman thought for a moment. Then another word slipped into his mind. "Lyra. Lyra," Joren repeated. That at least he could say. She nodded once and her eyelids fluttered as though the act of sharing even that small truth had drained her. "Why were you frozen, Lyra?" Joren asked, her body tensed. Her eyes narrowed slightly, silver light dimming like a star behind clouds. He felt her fear before he saw it, a cold shiver in his skull. Then her voice echoed weakly inside him. "Taken, captured, sold." Joren's jaw tightened. He had guessed it, but hearing it confirmed sent anger boiling in his chest. "Who did this to you?" Her gaze dropped to the floor. Her hand trembled as she clutched the blanket around her body. For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then hunters, always hunting. "My kind, valuable," Power feared. Her words scratched at his mind like broken glass. Power feared, hunters valuable. He swallowed hard. Whoever these hunters were, they weren't simple traders. And if her kind was valuable, then having her aboard his ship painted a target on his back. "Listen," Joren said carefully, leaning closer. "I didn't buy you to sell you. I'm not one of them." Her eyes flicked to his face, searching, piercing. He felt her mind brush against his, light as a feather but sharp as a blade. For a moment he wasn't just himself. He saw himself through her eyes, tired, ragged, but holding her like something precious. She pulled back, her expression softening. "I know," Joren exhaled, shoulders sagging. For the first time in years, someone believed him without question. No bargaining, no suspicion, just trust. He rubbed his face and stood. "You need food. Something warm." The galley offered little more than ration packs and reheated stew, but it was better than nothing. He brought a bowl to her, helping her sit upright. She held the spoon awkwardly, fingers trembling, but with patience she managed to lift the food to her lips. When she tasted it, her eyes widened. She gave a faint, surprised laugh in his mind. Strange, heavy, but good. Joren chuckled, the sound rusty. Glad to hear it. As she ate, he studied her more closely. Her skin shimmered faintly, glowing with each breath, fading with each exhale. Her hair, white as fire, framed her face like threads of light. She was fragile, yes, but there was something beneath that fragility. Something hidden, dangerous, waiting. When she was done, she leaned back against the pillow. Her eyes locked onto him again. "They will come," Joren frowned. "Who?" "The hunters." "They will follow." "They always follow." His gut clenched. He had hoped, foolishly, that buying her from that filthy merchant would end the story there. But he had known better deep down. Nothing was ever that simple. He looked at her, then at the dark window where stars streaked past. He should turn back, drop her somewhere safe, leave her before the trouble caught up. That was survival. That was logic. But when he met her silver eyes, he knew he couldn't. He had lived too long alone, drifting without purpose. Now in this fragile, broken woman, he had found something to fight for. He leaned forward, voice firm. "If they come, then we'll deal with them. Together." Her lips parted in a faint smile. and her voice brushed softly against his mind. "Protector, the chase begins." The stars slid by in endless silence, but Captain Joran could not shake the feeling of being watched. The freighter creaked as it moved, its engines humming low like the sound of a tired animal. Inside, the air was heavy with tension. In the crew quarters, Lyra rested. Her strength was returning slowly. Every day, the silver glow of her skin grew brighter, as if she was waking not just from the ice but from something much deeper. Joran sat near the pilot's console, eyes fixed on the scanner. He had rerouted power to the ship's sensors, but the display flickered, showing static more often than stars. Then it happened. A sharp ping echoed across the screen. Not one ship, two, then three. Bounty hunters. Joran cursed under his breath. He slammed a switch, trying to scramble his signal. Too late. The hunters had locked onto his ship's ID. He ran to the crew quarters. Lyra's eyes opened at once, as though she had felt the danger even in sleep. Her voice brushed across his mind, quick and sharp. "They are here." "Hunters?" Joran asked. She nodded weakly. "They smell me. They never stop. They will not stop now." The freighter shook as the first hunter ship fired a warning shot. Sparks danced across the control panels. Joran grabbed the straps on the wall, pulling himself toward the cockpit. "Hold on," he shouted. The old ship roared as he pushed the engines to full. Metal groaned, the hull rattled, but the freighter surged forward, slipping into the edge of an asteroid field. Jagged rocks spun slowly, massive shadows drifting in the void. Perfect cover or a perfect grave. Another blast rocked the ship. Joran gritted his teeth. "Come on, hold together." Lyra stumbled into the cockpit, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. Her silver eyes glowed brighter than before, reflecting the red warning lights. She steadied herself beside him, her voice whispering inside his head. "You cannot outrun them. This ship is weak. Then what do you suggest?" Joran snapped, jerking the controls as a rock spun past. A hunter ship followed close behind, sleek and deadly, its cannons glowing. Lyra's hand pressed against the side panel of the ship. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes sharpened, silver light burning in them. The lights in the cockpit flickered, dimmed, then pulsed with new energy. Joran felt it, like the hum of the engines was no longer mechanical but alive. The ship surged forward, moving faster than it had in years. He stared at her. "What are you doing?" Her answer came in his mind, soft but fierce. "I am helping, but it cost me much." The freighter weaved between asteroids, twisting through tight gaps that should have torn it apart. Yet each time the rock seemed to shift just enough, paths opening like doors. The hunters fired again, but the blasts scattered against drifting stone. Still, more hunters appeared on the scanner. 4, 5. They were closing in, herding the freighter deeper into the field. Joran slammed the console. "Damn it! We can't win this fight." Lyra's hand shook, her silver glow dimming, but her voice pressed harder into his mind, steady and clear. "They fear me. That is why they chase. They want what I am, but they do not understand." Her eyes lifted to his, burning with a fierce light. "With you, I am more." Joran felt the words sink into him, deep and undeniable. He had lived his life alone, never tied to anyone, never trusted. But now this fragile, hunted woman looked at him as if he was the difference between life and death. He gripped the controls, jaw set. "Then let's show them." The freighter roared forward. Joran pulled hard on the controls, sending the ship spinning sideways. The hunters followed, but their sleek ships could not match the freighter's wild, desperate maneuvers. One clipped an asteroid, exploding in a burst of fire. Another fired too soon, blasting a rock that shattered into fragments and tore its hull apart. But the rest pressed closer. Joran's hands shook on the controls. His ship was dying, engines overheating, alarms screaming. Then Lyra stepped forward. She pressed both palms to the control panel. Her body glowed, silver light spilling into the cockpit, flooding the ship. Outside, the hunters prepared to fire. But just before the blast could land, the freighter vanished, not gone, not destroyed, moved. Joran blinked. Stars stretched, blurred, and then snapped back into focus. The scanners showed empty space. No hunters. No asteroids. His hand shook. What did you do?" Lyra collapsed into the co-pilot's seat, chest rising and falling fast. Her voice came weakly into his mind. "I bent the path, only a little. Too much will break me, but enough to save us now." Joran stared at her, stunned. She had shifted the ship, through space itself. The hunters were gone, at least for now, but the fear remained. If they were willing to chase her this far, they would never stop. He leaned back, exhaling hard, heart pounding in his chest. He looked at Lyra, pale and trembling but alive, and whispered, "We're in this together now." Her lips curved faintly, though her eyes were heavy with exhaustion. "Protect her," she whispered again. Joran turned back to the stars. They had survived, for now. But he knew the chase had only begun. Her secret power. The ship floated in silence after the escape. The engines groaned, cooling from the strain, and faint smoke curled from the vents. Captain Joran leaned back in his chair, sweat running down his neck. His hands were still shaking from what he had just seen. They hadn't jumped to light speed. They hadn't used any wormhole gate. Yet one moment they had been surrounded by hunter ships, and the next, they were somewhere else. Across from him, Lyra sat slumped in the co-pilot's seat, her face pale, her glow dim. She looked like a candle about to go out. "You should rest," Joran said quietly. Her silver eyes half opened, fixing on him. "I cannot rest. They will follow, always. They can't track us this far," he said, though he wasn't sure. His voice sounded hollow even to himself. "Whatever you just did, you saved us." Her lips parted. No sound came, but her voice echoed in his mind. "Power cost me. I give too much and I break." Joran swallowed hard. She wasn't just some helpless refugee. She had power, something rare, something terrifying. And that was why they hunted her. For hours, silence stretched between them, broken only by the ship's humming. Joran patched wires, kicked at broken panels, trying to keep his freighter alive. Lyra sat quietly, her gaze on the stars. Then the alarm blared again. Joran rushed to the console. Another ship had appeared on the scanner, larger, armored, with weapons hot. A pirate cruiser, drawn by the scent of an old freighter limping across empty space. "Of course," Joran muttered, gripping the controls. The cruiser blocked their path, launching smaller fighters. "We can't outrun this one." The freighter shuddered as the first barrage struck. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Joran cursed and threw the ship into a dive, but the cruiser was faster, stronger, deadlier. Lyra rose to her feet, swaying with exhaustion. She placed one hand on the control panel. "No," Joran snapped. "You're too weak already." Her silver eyes locked on him. "Without me, we die." Before he could argue, the cockpit filled with light. Lyra's skin blazed like molten silver. Her hair lifted, glowing strands floating in the air as if the gravity had vanished. Outside, the pirate cruiser fired again. The blast should have torn them apart, but the energy froze mid-flight. Bright plasma held in place like paint on glass. The shots dissolved into dust, fading into nothing. Joran's mouth fell open. "What in the void?" Lyra didn't answer. Her eyes closed, her body trembling as the glow around her spread beyond the ship. For a brief moment, the freighter wasn't just metal and wires. It felt alive. The hull shone faintly like it was wrapped in silver fire. The pirate fighters dove in, weapons blazing. Each blast bent away, curving harmlessly into space as if an invisible shield surrounded them. Then, with a flick of her hand, one fighter spun out of control, colliding with another in a burst of flame. Joran gripped the chair, heart pounding. She wasn't just defending them. She was controlling the very fabric of energy, bending it like clay in her hands. The pirate cruiser hesitated, unsure. Then it fired its main cannon, a beam bright enough to split moons. Joran braced for death. But Lyra stepped forward, her glow blazing brighter than ever. She raised both hands, palms open. The beam struck her shield of light and stopped. It didn't explode. It didn't shatter. It simply vanished, swallowed into nothingness, and then, with a single sharp motion, she hurled it back. The beam shot into the cruiser's side, slicing through metal like paper. The ship tore apart in a flash of fire and silence. The remaining fighters scattered, fleeing into the stars. The light faded. Lyra staggered, nearly collapsing. Joran rushed to catch her, holding her trembling body in his arms. Her glow dimmed until only her faint silver skin remained. "Easy," he whispered, lowering her into the chair. "You don't have to push yourself like that." Her eyes fluttered open, weak but steady. "Now you see," Joran nodded slowly, stunned. "I see why they fear you." She shook her head faintly. "Not fear, greed, they want me. To chain, to use. My kind were hunted because power in wrong hands destroys worlds." Joran stared at her. Worlds, not ships. Worlds. He tried to imagine an army with dozens of her kind, able to bend energy, stop cannons, tear fleets apart. No wonder hunters chased her across the stars. He brushed a strand of glowing hair from her face. Then they're going to come harder, stronger, they'll never stop. Her gaze met his. For a moment, her voice wasn't just a whisper in his mind, it was sharp, fierce, alive. Then we never stop either. Joran froze. The words echoed in him, sparking something he hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not despair, a purpose. The freighter drifted through the quiet dark, smoke still curling from its hull. But inside, Captain Joran and Lyra sat side by side. No longer strangers, no longer alone. The hunters had seen her power. The galaxy would hear of it soon, and when they came again, they would face not just an alien woman, but the human who had chosen to protect her. For the first time, Joran allowed himself to smile. "They're going to regret chasing us," he said softly. Lyra leaned back, her eyes closing, but her voice brushed his mind with a final word before sleep took her. Together. Bond of trust. The freighter drifted in the shadow of a red dwarf star, its battered hull patched with quick repairs. Captain Joran moved slowly through the corridors, tightening bolts, checking wires, trying to keep the ship alive for one more day. Every step echoed in the empty halls, but he was no longer truly alone. In the crew quarters, Lyra rested. The battle against the pirate cruiser had drained her, but even in sleep she seemed to glow faintly as though the ship itself breathed through her presence. Joran paused at the doorway, watching her for a moment. He didn't understand her power, not fully. He only knew that it frightened him, and yet it also gave him hope. When her eyes opened, silver and calm, she found him standing there. Her voice brushed against his mind, soft and almost playful. "Protector, you stare too much." Joran cleared his throat, embarrassed. "Just making sure you're alive." "Alive," she whispered. "Because of you." The words struck deeper than he expected. He turned away, hiding the strange weight in his chest, and busied himself with fixing a loose panel. For the next few days, their strange rhythm settled in. Joran kept the freighter running, trading scraps at forgotten outposts, scrounging for fuel. Lyra moved through the ship slowly, learning the layout, touching the walls like she was listening to the heartbeat of the vessel. Sometimes she spoke with her mind, other times she said nothing at all, but her presence filled the silence that once had suffocated him. At meals, she tried the simple rations he offered. She laughed the first time she bit into a protein bar, her voice echoing in his head. "This is food." "Humans are strange," Joran chuckled. "It keeps you alive." "That's all that matters," but Lyra shook her head. "Alive is not the same as living." Her words stayed with him long after. One evening, as the ship drifted through quiet space, Joran found her in the observation bay. She stood near the glass, her hair glowing faintly in the starlight. Outside, a field of shattered moons drifted, broken pieces circling a dead world. "What happened here?" Joran asked, joining her. Her voice came softly. "War. Long ago, my people fought to protect this system. We won, but at a cost. Too much power can break more than enemies. It can break everything." Joran studied her face, seeing not just beauty but sorrow carved deep within. He realized then that her strength wasn't a gift, it was a burden, a weight she carried even as others hunted her for it. "Lyra," he said quietly, "you're not alone anymore. Not while you're on this ship." Her silver eyes turned to him. She studied him carefully, searching, measuring. Then slowly she reached out her hand. Her fingers brushed his, light as starlight. For a moment, their minds touched fully. Joran gasped. He wasn't just hearing her thoughts, he was feeling them. Memories spilled through him. Flashes of her world, towers of crystal glowing under twin suns, laughter of her people, songs carried on the wind. Then the screams, the fire, the hunters descending like shadows. He felt her fear, her loss, her endless running. And then he felt something else. The moment she had opened her eyes aboard his ship, weak and frozen, and seen him. The relief, the fragile trust, the quiet belief that maybe, just maybe, she was safe. Lyra pulled back, her glow dimming. But her eyes held his. "Now you know," Joran's throat tightened. He had thought of himself as nothing more than a drifter, a man clinging to scraps in the void. But through her he had seen himself as she saw him, a protector, a light in her darkness. "I won't let them take you," he said firmly. "Not while I'm breathing." For the first time, her lips curved into a true smile. "And I will not let them take you. Protector, we are bound. The word echoed inside him. Not by chains, not by blood, but by choice. That night, sleep came easier. For both of them. But peace never lasted long in the galaxy. The next day, a coded transmission broke across their comms, sharp and crackling. A bounty notice filled the screen. The image of Lyra frozen in the cryo-pod. The reward was more than most men would see in a lifetime. Every pirate, mercenary, and hunter would be chasing them now. Joran's jaw clenched. He looked at Lyra, who stood silently by his side. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. "They'll never stop," Joran said. Her voice brushed his mind, steady and fierce. "Then we never stop either." In that moment, something shifted. She was no longer a stranger he had saved. She was his partner, his ally. His bond, the galaxy would come for them both. And together they would fight. The human choice. The freighter trembled as alarms screamed through its halls. Red lights flashed, casting long shadows across the cockpit. Captain Joran gripped the controls, his knuckles white, sweat dripping down his face. On the scanner, 6 hunter ships closed in from every direction. Their weapons glowed hot, ready to tear the freighter apart. "They found us again," Joran muttered. His voice was tight, low. He had been expecting this moment, but not so soon. Beside him, Lyra stood still, her silver eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. Her glow brightened, but her body trembled, weak from days of pushing her limits. "Too many," her voice whispered in his mind. "Even with my power, I cannot hold them all." Joran's chest tightened. He wanted to deny it, but he saw the truth. The freighter was an old shell, its weapons barely functional, its engines coughing smoke. Against 1 hunter ship, they had a chance. Against 6, there was none. Lyra turned to him. Her voice pressed into his thoughts, filled with sorrow. "Let me go, Protector. If I give myself, they may spare you. Alone, you survive." Joran snapped his head toward her, fury flashing in his eyes. "No, don't you dare say that. You cannot win this fight." "Maybe not," Joran growled, pulling hard on the controls as a blast ripped across their hull, sending sparks flying. "But I'd rather die fighting than live running. You think I'm going to hand you over to them? Not a chance." Her gaze softened, glowing like starlight. "Why?" Joran's throat tightened. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, in a low voice, "Because you're not just cargo. You're not just some prize, you're you." Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to speak aloud, but no words came. Only her eyes shone, bright and wet. The freighter shook again as another blast tore across its side. "Hull integrity failing. Shields gone, hold on," Joran shouted. He pushed the ship into a wild spin, dodging fire. The hunters closed in tighter, a noose of steel and flame. Then something shifted. Lyra's glow brightened, stronger than he had ever seen. Her hair lifted like strands of light, her body blazing with silver fire. She stepped forward, placing both hands on the console. "No." Joran grabbed her wrist. "You'll kill yourself." Her eyes locked on his, fierce and unyielding. Together, Joran froze. Then slowly he let go. Her glow poured into the ship, filling every panel, every wire. Joran felt it, like the freighter itself was waking up. The engines roared with new life. The hull gleamed faintly silver. The controls thrummed beneath his hands. It was no longer just his ship. It was theirs. "All right," he muttered, gripping the controls tighter. "Let's show them what happens when you corner us." The first hunter ship fired. Joran twisted the freighter aside faster than the ship had ever moved. Lyra's power flowed through him, guiding his hands, showing him paths between the blasts. They moved as one. Pilot and alien, man and power. Each thought mirrored, each action shared. He fired the freighter's cannons. For once, the weak weapons struck true. The bolts cut into a hunter ship, tearing it apart in a burst of flame. Another ship closed in, but Lyra raised her hand, silver energy bursting outward. The hunter's weapons froze, power systems shutting down. It drifted helplessly, a shadow in space. Joran laughed, a wild, breathless sound. "We can do this!" But Lyra's glow flickered, her body shaking. She was burning too fast, giving too much. He could feel her weakening even as she held them alive. "Lyra," he said sharply, "pull back. You'll die." Her eyes turned to him, steady and calm. "Then I die free." "No," Joran shouted, anger and fear twisting inside him. "We live free, together, do you hear me? Together!" For a moment, their minds clashed. His stubborn will against her resolve. Then something shifted. Instead of burning herself alone, she let him share the weight. Energy flooded through him. It burned fierce and heavy, but he held on. They were linked now, bound by choice, carrying the power together. The freighter blazed with silver fire, streaking through the hunters like a comet. Joran fired, Lyra struck, and one by one the ships fell. Burning wrecks scattered across the void. When the last hunter exploded, silence returned. The freighter drifted, battered but alive. Joran slumped in his chair, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. Beside him, Lyra collapsed into the co-pilot's seat. Her glow dimmed, but her eyes stayed open, fixed on him. Weak but alive, Joran turned to her, his voice rough. "We made it." Her lips curved faintly, and her voice brushed his mind with the softest whisper. "Protector." He reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "Not just protector, partner." Her silver eyes shone, and for the first time she whispered aloud, her voice trembling but clear. "Together." Outside, the freighter drifted through the endless dark, two fugitives bound by trust, hunted by the galaxy. But inside, for the first time in years, Joran felt alive. They weren't just running anymore. They were fighting. They were free, and the galaxy would never be the same.